Hello and welcome back to the Game Room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love? Talking about games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me. And that's not the 5,238 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. Another great week. Thank you guys so much. I want to give a special shout out to Wolfman 9008. I asked for some Switch suggestions at the end of the last video, and he came in with a list of like 40 games, some of which I've covered, some of which I haven't covered yet, but the vast majority games I had not even heard of, was unaware of. And I've grabbed a handful of them, as well as I think next week I'm even going to do a video where I talk about games I wish I had, which are just going to be games from that list. So definitely check out that. If you guys have more suggestions for me, by all means pile them on. I am getting to that point where I need to pick up some more Switch games or be familiar with which ones I should look up. And there is one game I'm covering this week that was suggested by our friend, and it's probably one of the best games I played this week. Alright, so we got another 10 Switch games. If that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, so the first game we're going to talk about this week was a game that I was very excited about until I wasn't excited about it. This game, I want to say, came out years ago. It was not quite a sequel, but it was the next game in this series. However, they went away from it being the game it was into an auto runner. And that immediately had me not wanting it. I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't pick it up. Lo and behold, it was a big success. There was physical editions. They brought one out to the Switch. And I just so happened to see one that was on sale, I want to say during Prime Day. So I figured, all right, I'll grab it. Or something like that. I picked it up. And that game is Super Meat Boy Forever. So in this game, same kind of cast. You have Meat Boy, Bandage Girl. It looks like you have a child, and then the evil doctor, whatever his name is, kidnaps the child. So each level you can play as either Bandage Girl or Meat Boy. And then when I was playing it, there was a loading screen where it said seed being chosen. So I don't know if the whole game randomly generates every time you play it. It is called Super Meat Boy Forever, so it's intended you could play it forever. But one of my favorite things about Meat Boy was the fact that it was largely a single screen or a little bit of a scrolling game, but you could control yourself. And in this, you constantly move forward. And in that little, like, if you're a Super Meat Boy fan, I knew this going into it. That's part of the reason why I didn't want to play it to begin with, because I just don't enjoy that. When you get to a wall, you can jump up the wall, or you can jump and go turn around, and then that has you going in the other direction. And these are very long levels that you scroll through. Also, another one of my favorite things in Super Meat Boy was the replay, where you see all the Meat Boys fail. But because this is a game where you're going in a linear fashion, generally the run where you end up winning, it wasn't as satisfying. And I will say, as I played it longer, as I was getting familiar with the new mechanics, it is a fun game in its own right. Don't get me wrong. I still think it's worth picking up. I would recommend it if you enjoy Super Meat Boy. Once you get past that initial hiccup, it does still have the charm of the series. It looks identical to it, feels the same as far as the way the platforming feels. It's just the point that you can't course correct in midair, which I find very annoying. For the life of me, don't know why they decided to make this choice. You could have the identical game, just without the restriction of being forced, if you turn around, you're going around. But I digress. It's fun. Is it as fun as the original Super Meat Boy? In my opinion, no. Would I recommend one or the other? Definitely the original Super Meat Boy. This game, just one of those bizarre, why did they decide to go this way? But from what I've seen, it is still very popular. So that's one to snag on a physical version if you're interested in it, because it is still worth having. I'm still glad I played it. Just you know, it's one of those things where I knew it. I knew I was onto something when I didn't want to pick it up, and I definitely confirmed that. Though I will say, the longer I played it, the more I got familiar with the new style, the less it bothered me. But it still does bother me. But there you go. All right, and another game that was mentioned last week in that big list, but I did have it, I just haven't covered it yet, and I figured this was the time to take a look at it, was Pocky and Rocky Reshrined. So I do have the Super Nintendo version of this game. I don't have the sequel. I picked it up years ago when it was still expensive, but not nearly as expensive as it is now. This is also a game that I've covered on the channel. Famously, I played the co-op version with my wife and had a great time. I did go through and beat the game on single player. It is very tough. It's sort of a shooter, like a shoot 'em up. I call those shooters. It's sort of like that, but you have a free roam of the character where you can go backwards and forwards. It does lock you in, so once you progress the level, you can't really go backwards, but you are free to move about, but there's walls in the way, and you can get different power-ups, a blue one, a red one, which either gives you a spread gun or a fire gun, and I think they've introduced some new abilities. There's a green one that drops now. I know there's additional characters that they've added to the game. However, I will say the jump from the Super Nintendo to the Switch, I don't know if my skills just got worse, but it seemed vastly harder than the one on the Super Nintendo. And I don't know if it's just because the controlling 2D games with a Switch controller, or just any controller with analog sticks, always feels a little different than when you're holding in a genuine Super Nintendo controller. So maybe it was that, but I wasn't enjoying it as much. I couldn't even get out of the first level. Now bear in mind, I played the game, I understand it, I know it's fun. I'm sure the co-op mode is still fun, but it just seemed like I was getting my ass handed to me way more than I did on the Super Nintendo one. And the Super Nintendo one's no slouch. So let me know, did any of you guys played both of them and agree with me? I know there was difficulty sliders, but I think I played it on just the regular mode. But yeah, that's another one that is a very cool remake. At least it stays true to the original, but maybe I need to get another controller or something that emulates that Super Nintendo experience, because even when I was trying to use the D-pad, it just wasn't going well. But that's one to definitely take a look at. That's pretty cool to have, and yes, I love all these Super Nintendo games that get reimagined for the Switch, though to be honest with you, outside of the Ninja Warriors, I haven't really enjoyed them that much, and that's the only one I don't have the Super Nintendo game of, so what are you going to do? Alright, moving on. This was a game that is made by Obsidian, which Obsidian was a developer I really did not know much about. And then when I covered all the Xbox 360 games, I just realized that they put out some great titles. Things like Alpha Protocol, of course they did the Fallout New Vegas. But I know a lot of people now will say Obsidian of then is not the Obsidian of now. And this game particularly kind of highlighted that for myself. And that was Pentiment. So this originally was an Xbox exclusive, I believe. It shows when the title loads up, it says Xbox Studios Presents, which once again, feel about Game Pass, feel about Xbox however you will, but not having exclusives is the reason why the Xbox failed. As someone who did buy the Xbox One first and not the PS4, because they had Titanfall and it was a disappointment, and then they had things like Ori and the Blind Forest, but then they brought those to the Switch. They had Cuphead, but then Cuphead went elsewhere. It got to the point of why on earth am I investing in this system when an Xbox Series X came out? I didn't get it because I knew that there would be no reason to. And I know a lot of people like it these days, where kind of the PC culture, the Steam culture, has stepped in and replaced that console exclusivity, that console love, and a lot of people hate Nintendo for doing this. Ultimately, if they do not do this, there's no reason to buy those systems. Also, conversely, what Xbox has done is, because people are now doing Game Pass and they're now used to not buying things, they can get it anywhere, they get it on Steam sales. The developers, in order to make their money, have increased the prices on the games of the people like me who do buy it day one, or more likely they've added microtransactions to be more like mobile gaming, which has ruined, everything's paid DLC, there's stuff on the disc locked out, this and that. I mean, that's I'll get off my soapbox, that's my take on it. That's why, as much as Nintendo can be frustrating, knowing that they will never give away their exclusives means that buying a Switch 2, and yes, right now it only has Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza, but it will have more games to justify that purchase. Just hopefully they are not on key cards. Okay, anyways, but Pentiment, I haven't even talked about Pentiment. Pentiment is a game that just very strange. You're in this medieval world where it seems like you can write your story and then interact with the townsfolk and decide kind of what's going on, but it's largely, at least on the surface, feels like a visual novel type thing where you choose your own adventure, you navigate through the world, you do this and that. And to be honest, I just was not enjoying it. It had this thing where you could have different fonts, and originally I kept it at the regular font, but it just got very annoying very quickly, so I swapped it back to the easy-to-read fonts, which look cool. You know, it looked like something like Octopath. But I was not sure what this game was trying to do. It felt like an indie game, and knowing the pedigree of Obsidian that I've come across in the last 2 years from all the 360 games I played, and even there's some more recent releases I thought that were still solid, I just thought it makes sense. And I think they made Avowed too, which did really poorly. But yeah, that one, it is still worth having because I like having this stuff. You know, once again, this might be guilty of me because I'm covering so many games in a week. You can only get so much from it, and immediately you could tell, oh, this is a time sink. This is going to be a large investment. Maybe it gets more interesting. I just didn't find it all that interesting. All right, now here's one that surprisingly was hard to find. It is getting a restock still, and you know, don't overpay for it. I want to say I paid on Amazon kind of what it's going for, maybe a little bit more just because it is getting harder to find. But that is the Lunar Remastered Collection. So this has Lunar 1, Lunar 2. I believe it uses the PS1 script maybe, or maybe they changed it. I don't know. I haven't opened it if you can't see, but I'm just letting you guys know this is definitely one to grab. People who have played it, people who love Lunar, say this is the best way to experience the game, more so than the Genesis, more so than the PS1 version, and I'm probably inclined to agree with them just because it is so much more accessible having it on the Switch, even though I have the PS1 version, but I only have the second one, and you know, this one is still around $50-$60, but much better than if you want to go get one of those really cool working design releases on the PS1, which are like a couple $100. But it's got both games. They're both classic turn-based RPGs from the early 90s. Think, you know, early Final Fantasy, early Dragon Warrior, that kind of thing, or Phantasy Star from what I've heard. And there's not really much else that's happened with the series. There are other games. I think there was one on the GBA that wasn't released out here, but it just kind of died on the vine. And with all of these sort of early PS1, you know, Genesis RPGs, I like to support them. I like having them, and that's what's great about the Switch is a lot of them have gotten re-released, and that is one I would definitely recommend picking up. Alright, now here's one that I grabbed because my buddy Rewind Mike said it's a Zelda 2 clone, just look at the reversible cover, and so I grabbed it off Amazon years ago for like $20. I never played it until today, and I gotta say I'm glad I did, and that game is Elliot Quest. So even more so than Agalos, which has a little bit of its DNA also in Monster Boy, or not Monster Boy, Wonder Boy. This one is full Zelda 2. In fact, you can see the reversible cover. The normal one looks like this, so if you don't want the gold spine, you don't have to. But I love Adventures of Link, hence why it's emulating that. And it's a tried and true Zelda clone, but instead of having a sword, at least in the beginning, you have a bow and arrow. And the bow and arrow gameplay is pretty damn fun. I did not play too long. I got to the first dungeon and really was enjoying it. I don't remember the music being anything too spectacular. The art style is very much an indie looking game, so it's not as pretty as even something like Agalos, but for as cheap as you can find it, and if you like that Adventure of Link style of game, this is one I can't recommend more. I really liked playing the brief amount I did, and the fact that it has the bow and arrow gameplay is a nice switch up because typically you're not getting that much, especially not in the indie release scene. Generally, you're going using sword, hack and slash, maybe some magic here and there, but this one being bow and arrow was pretty cool. You know, evokes sort of the, you know, the Rygar gameplay, or maybe even Kid Icarus, that kind of thing. All right, the game that was recommended by Wolfman that I had never heard of, and I went and picked it up. And even when I picked it up, I thought it was more in line with, say, something like 2 Point Hospital or, The Escapist, one of those things based on it. But popping it in within moments, immediately, I'm like, oh, this is just a Stardew Valley clone. And I've even looked it up, and people get really offended when you make that comparison, because the more you play it, the more you realize that it isn't a clone, but it is. And that game is Graveyard Keeper. How I didn't know this game existed is one of those tried and true things where there are so many games that come out now. They're so hard to keep track of, especially when they get released on Steam and then, say, get a port 3-4 years down the line and you just don't hear about it. Graveyard Keeper is incredible. If you like Stardew Valley, think of it like this is Stardew Valley's goth cousin that loves Halloween, that is a very dark story, does not necessarily rely on sort of the tedium of daily chores as much as it has a set of things, almost like a Metroidvania, where you need to get this to unlock this area, and you have to get those crafting reagents to do that. And it really seems to drip feed that out, because it's very hard to get money, at least where I'm at it right now. I've managed to reopen the church, I cleaned up the graveyard, but I have not been able to do much else. I've been scrounging for less than 2 silver a day, it seems. And unlike also with Stardew Valley, which once again is a reimagining of Harvest Moon, where you have a day cycle, you run out of energy, there's events throughout the calendar. With Graveyard Keeper, there is a 6-day calendar, and on each one of those days, there might be a certain event that can happen that day. So it's not where, you missed the Halloween festival and now you have to wait a year to get to it. No, if you miss that the cleric is at the church, you just gotta wait another 5 days to be able to get back to him. As well as your energy meter, when you get down to nothing, does not immediately knock you out. You can just go and eat some reagents and then continue on. As well as if you're up at the daylight or up at the nighttime, other than NPCs being out to be able to be tradable with, there's no real reason why the time of day matters. As well as you can just keep eating reagents and stay up all day long. It's got some interesting humor behind it. Though one thing I do think is a little bit of a detriment is that as you progress with the game, it seems like it throws more roadblocks in your face. So there's a donkey who's dropping off this corpse to your place every day, and then when I opened up the church, he's like, okay, now that you open up the church, you're gonna have to give me 10 carrots every time I drop off a corpse. So now I'm starting to see the balance of, there may not be the need to do the daily chores where you're watering your crops, because in this you have a garden too where you can plant carrots, but the carrots just kind of take care of themselves. But now I'm going to have to constantly resource manage. Okay, have I gotten enough carrots to the donkey? Have I brought enough food and water to the people up north who are the aristocrats? Have I done this and that? And I can see how all those plates moving simultaneously to people who have really invested in it will say this is not Stardew Valley at all. But come on, guys. Same art style, same basic mechanics, same basic menus. It's like saying, yes, I know Astrobot is not Mario Odyssey, but it's clear as day. If you liked one and try the other, there's about a 90% shot that you'll enjoy it, and I'll say that with this one too. If you like Stardew Valley, try this one out. It's definitely got some differences, but it's, once again, like comparing Chrono Trigger, the Lufia 2, Rise of the Sinestrals. They're both great games. They don't have all the same mechanics, but they got a lot of the same pieces, just put in different places, and phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed Graveyard Keeper. It kept me from playing anything else. As soon as I started playing it, I had to pivot on this, so that's why there's some games on this one today that I haven't played yet, because I was enjoying playing this too much. So yes, thank you so much for the suggestion. I got other games that have arrived too. I got more on the way, and there are ones I'm looking into. So this was the first one I picked, which I didn't even realize it was a Stardew Valley clone. I'm very happy, so thank you again, Wolfman. Alright. Speaking of games I didn't play this week, I think this is the last one of this other than the first one that I haven't talked about, but that is Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. So the last holdout of the Wii U finally got brought over. I'm telling you guys, this is one to grab. I don't know if we'll ever hear more from this game. Maybe we will, but it is a very, very long game, and the thing that I remember about it is that you unlock a skell about 70, 80 hours in, and then that's when the game really opens up, but it's like a 150, 200 hour experience, which for myself has made it almost impossible for me to ever start this game. But I know one of these days, maybe when I'm 80 years old in a nursing home, I'll be finally cracking this bad boy open. But it was one of the last holdouts of the Wii U, which I still have the Wii U version too. It's probably unopened. But at this point, it's probably never going to get opened because now I have this definitive edition, and I highly recommend grabbing it. It was pretty hard to track down too. Like once it came out, I remember, especially now that Amazon doesn't carry these damn things, because I don't know why they're upset with Nintendo. But yeah, that's one to grab. It is a long experience. It does not necessarily follow the same timelines as Xenoblade 1s through 3, but people who've played this game really, really like it. Just know you are getting into a time sink if you jump into it, and it's why I have not. Alright, a game that I saw at Walmart of all places when I was out shopping with my wife and child. I just happened to see it, and I remembered when this series came out. Once again, another Xbox exclusive that then shortly after the first game came out, came on other consoles. Well, this was a sequel that came out very quickly after the first one, and everyone said was even better, and that was Unravel 2. And what made this game cool is that there was co-op mode, but actually playing the game, you can play the game in solo mode, and basically you have two different characters that are attached at a rope. They have a different color. You can reassign that color if you want. So it starts as blue and red, but I made mine white and purple just because I could. I wanted to play around with it. And what can happen is that you use each character to help navigate the other one through the world. Similar to Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, there's an area where they're tied with a rope and you have to swing one to get the other one to go. That's kind of how this game plays out, but in a side-scrolling fashion, and pretty much the whole game. But then you have the ability to have the other one be carried on the first one. So if you're not playing it on co-op mode, then you can basically reduce from two characters to one. And then when you get to a puzzle that requires two characters, you split off and then you use one to do the other. And you think it would be annoying, but it actually was pretty damn engaging and fun. You know, a fun game. Doesn't require too much reading, doesn't require too much thinking. You know, they talk about these second screen shows, these second screen movies now that they have, that Netflix does and all this. And the second screen phenomenon is something that I've kind of been born into. You know, some lore about myself. I was fortunate enough to have two televisions in my room because I had an older brother. He moved out, I got his TV, and then I had mine. So then I made a network of, I had the TV here in front of me that was for gaming, and then the TV over here I had television. And for my whole life, I've just been ingrained with having, say, The Simpsons on in the background, Friends, Seinfeld, football, baseball, while I was playing a game. So that's why some of these story games, when I have to be so focused on it every 5 seconds, bothers me. That's why when I play these RPGs where the grinding battles require so much thought, bother me, because you know what? I guess it's just built into me. I can think about the gameplay, but if I'm having to think about the story and this and that, like my thoughts in my head block out my entertainment there, which maybe you're doing right now while you're listening to me. But anyways, Unravel 2, really fun, a really solid game, and yet another example of why if these things were locked on Xbox, there'd be more reason to get it. I don't get that mentality. Exclusivity is the reason to get these things. Otherwise, why would I not just get a PC if it can play everything? Which maybe is kind of the point, because I know a lot of people spewing this nonsense tend to be PC Master Race. Alright, last couple of games here. So this is one that I'm just throwing out here because it's dirt cheap. It's not going to go up in price like a lot of these aren't, but some of them will. And, you want to get them now if you can. And that is Hasbro Family Game Night. Now, I haven't played Risk, I haven't played Monopoly, but I'm sure they're decent. But the one I'm going to talk about is Trivial Pursuit. I love Trivial Pursuit. It's a game I've been playing since I was a kid, and every time you play Trivial Pursuit, especially the old ones, it really makes you feel like an idiot. Well, what's nice about this one is they gamify it in a much easier way. There's multiple choice answers. There's a little bit more collaboration in playing it. I still enjoy the original Trivial Pursuit, don't get me wrong, especially now that I actually understand it and know it better. But this is a fun, gamified version of it, and it's pretty approachable. You can play it with non-gamers. Like, that's why this is a good one. They talk about party games. I don't really have instances of having party games since, I'm here in my chamber alone all the time. But if I did, this would be one that would be fun for people who wanted to try it out or just wanted to play a board game but didn't want to set it up. and it's interesting the way they do it. The context, the clues are not super obtuse, and I enjoyed it. All right, and then the last game we're going to talk about today is one that was sort of the poster child of why we need physical releases, because this was a digital game that was delisted, and then it got a re-release, and everyone was screaming how great it is. I think there's even another version of it on Limited Run right now, but that is Scott Pilgrim Against the World, the complete game, or complete edition, which I'm guessing this isn't the complete edition anymore. And I gotta tell you, I didn't watch the movie when it came out. I went back and watched it years later, and I actually really did enjoy it. I had no idea it was basically a video gamey fighting game. But the game itself, this is sort of a quintessential Xbox Live download arcade game feel. It reminds me a lot of Double Dragon Neon, where it's like, wow, for $5 or $10, get some enjoyment out of it. I liked it enough. But the amount of praise this game gets, the amount of people say it's phenomenal, I don't quite agree with. As just playing through the first couple of stages, I was like, what, where's the hype? I think the hype behind this game largely came from the scenario of, hey, it's gone, we can't get it anymore, more than this quality of game is actually far superior. Maybe it's because I've played better games like Streets of Rage 4, that kind of thing, but it really just, I didn't dislike it, but I did not think it garnered the amount of every list saying this was the greatest game, this is the best downloaded game, the greatest delisted game. It was decent enough. I just didn't find it all that enjoyable. It reminded me a little of the River City Ransom type art style. I think they're called Ni no Kuni. That kind of gameplay. But when you would attack the enemies and pick them up and then like kind of throw them down, I guess you can use them as a weapon themselves. But I just found that the enemies seem to have an astronomical amount of health, and really the whole thing didn't find it all that enjoyable. But you might. And so I still think it's worth getting. I might just be jaded on that kind of brawler, because beat 'em ups and me, I like beat 'em ups when I like them, but I don't really like all of them. And maybe that's just the case with this one. But there you have it, guys. That is another 10 Switch games you should go out and pick up immediately. As a reminder, next week's video is probably going to be one where I focus on the games I don't have, because Graveyard Keeper was such a smash hit. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag on games I'm going to be looking for, so that if you guys have them, you can go and mark the prices up and make it so I have to pay even more money. So there you go. Also, another side note, just because I for the life of me did not understand why would I pick up the Switch 2 controller, Pro controller, when I have the Switch 1 Pro controller. So just for reference, here's the first one, and then here's the second one. They really look identical, but believe me, when you hear people say this one feels better, like you hear that sound, it's so smooth compared to this one. This one feels lighter, cheaper, plasticky. It still has the same amount of battery life on it, but I gotta say, I really have enjoyed using the Switch 2 controller. And yeah, I would say it's worth it, to be honest. I would say it's worth getting, especially you're already throwing money down the drain if you got a Switch 2 for only 2 games. So come on, guys, you can grab that too. But anyways, as a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.